Welcome to your 5-letter word. I'm your host, Christina, and in each episode, we explore how intentional communication and a strong mindset can transform your business, your relationships, and your personal growth. Whether we're covering communication strategies or sharing tips to shift your mindset, this podcast will help you learn to create more meaningful conversations in your life so that you can deepen your relationships and grow your business. So sit back, relax, and soak in the insights as we dive into today's conversation. And welcome to this episode of your 5-letter word. Today, we're going to be talking about finding your authentic voice and gaining confidence while you do that. Public speaking is one of the biggest fears that many people experience. Public speaking doesn't necessarily mean standing on a stage with a crowd of several hundred people in front of you. Public speaking is the speaking that you do in front of strangers. That would be my simple definition. That could be a team meeting, even if it's in front of colleagues. It could be a presentation, if it's for work, perhaps pitching to new clients. It could also be putting yourself out there on social media, maybe in the form of a reel or a post, where there is a fear of judgment and a fear of how people will respond to you, especially people that you don't know. We're always taught to focus on making the right first impression. And that puts a lot of pressure, a lot of self-imposed pressure on us. We create these standards and these ideals of what we think a good first impression is. When again, let me remind you, the majority of people have a fear of public speaking. So on the one hand, many people can understand the nerves, the fear, the lack of desire to do it. And on the other hand, if you're someone who's able to overcome that fear, if you're someone who's able to find your authentic voice, someone who's able to develop that sense of confidence, you're going to stick out in a really good way. And ultimately, that's probably what you're aiming for, whether it is in your business, whether it's talking to clients, whether it's just putting yourself out there. Developing your confidence is a lifelong skill that will serve you well in the long run. Now, I'm someone who experienced a lack of confidence for a very long time when it came to public speaking. One of the things I did, though, was intentionally putting myself out there in challenging and sort of public speaking situations that I wasn't necessarily doing on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, when I was in graduate school, there was something called a 3-minute thesis competition. Now, what this was essentially a public speaking competition for students. In graduate school, when doing my degree, I had multiple research projects that I was doing at the same time. And the point of this competition was essentially to see if you could take this complex scientific idea that you were working on, simplify it, and explain it to a broad audience that has no idea what you're doing or the specifics of what you're doing. Simplify it, make it engaging, and present it within 3 minutes. And so I remember I spent weeks preparing for this presentation. I did not tell anyone that I was doing this. When my supervisor knew, she invited the entire lab to come and watch, and that freaked me out even more. And so the day of, I showed up, and I sat, and I waited until it was my turn to present, and the entire time, my nerves were just escalating. My hands were sweating. I was blanking. I was trying to rehearse my presentation over and over again as I was watching the people in front of me present, and I was just getting more and more freaked out by the minute. But when it was my turn, I got up, I walked on that stage with that bright light shining on me, looked out into the audience, and just started speaking. And by that point, I had rehearsed it so many times that it was on autopilot, thankfully. And just those first few moments when the nerves were the hardest, I blanked out. And luckily, I was able to get through it. But my nerves showed. My nerves definitely showed. And that's okay, because it was a great learning opportunity. After the fact, I did not win, spoiler alert. However, one of the judges actually came up to me after they had announced the winners, and she told me that I was a close runner-up. So that was exciting. Maybe if I was able to overcome my nerves a little bit more, maybe I would have won, right? I'll never know. But the fact that she went out of her way to do that for me was a really amazing learning opportunity. Because rather than focusing on how the nerves had hit, rather than focusing on the fact that I had not won, rather than focusing on the feelings of embarrassment that I felt, I instead took it as a really good opportunity to show that I was capable of this, that I had the potential, that maybe with a little bit more practice, I would be a lot better in simple terms. And that's the types of experiences that we all need to have in order to find our voice, in order to find our style, and really to just develop the confidence over time. Like most things, I personally believe that confidence is a muscle. Some of us are perhaps born a little bit more confident than others. I would say we're nurtured to be more confident by our family and friends from a young age. But as we get older, as we meet more people, as things happen, and the layers start to pile on, many of us start to lose that confidence. But it's up to you to regain it. No one can do it for you. There's nothing that anyone can say that will make you confident, because at the end of the day, it's up to you. Even if you have the most supportive individuals in your corner telling you the things you need to hear to be confident, if you don't believe them, if you don't believe what they're saying to you, then the confidence won't follow. So how do we start to build confidence? Well, that's a great question. How do we start to build confidence? Well, we start by finding our authentic voice. Now, what does that really mean? Authenticity is something that's talked about quite a bit these days. And really, from my perspective, authenticity is just being true to you and your style and your communication preferences. So some people naturally speak a little bit faster. Some people naturally speak a little bit slower. Some people are naturally have a lot more variety and a lot more dramatic and have a lot more facial expressions. Other people are a lot more reserved. There's no real right or wrong. Sure, there's tips and tricks and strategies to become better. I'm not denying that. But what I am saying is that when you are able to feel comfortable with your natural way of communicating, you start to find your authentic voice. A common example of this is perhaps influencers who swear or who are overly exaggerating their facial expressions, but that's just how they naturally are. And so if there's something that you're doing that you feel like you need to hide or you feel like you need to put on an act, that will make it harder for you to communicate, especially to communicate in a confident way. If you feel like you have to put on a mask, an act, anytime you're doing a presentation, anytime you're talking to a new client, anytime you're on a sales call, that will contribute to the nerves. That will contribute to the stiffness. That will just make the communication a lot more stiff and reserved. And whoever's on the other end listening to that will pick up on it. They may not pick up on it right away, especially if it's the first time that they've met you. But subconsciously, we pick up on quite a lot. The energy, the intonation, the body language, the word choice, all of that comes through. And so if you're acting per se, the other person will start to pick up on that. And then they will, their interest in working with you, their interest in buying from you, it will just decrease naturally. Because then they may feel like you're trying to trick them, like you're being inauthentic, like you're not really experiencing what you say you are. And ultimately, that's just going to hurt your business and your reputation. Instead, finding your authentic voice, even if it is tailored a little bit to be more professional, will come through a lot more naturally and will help build that confidence for you as well. For example, if you're someone who tends to use a lot of humor, you can still use humor in your conversations, in your presentations. You would just tailor that humor to be appropriate for the context. That way, you still feel like your natural personality is coming through, and the listener or the audience is still getting that, taste of what you're really like. And once you start getting positive reactions to that, well, guess what? That is going to reinforce that you're doing the right thing, and it's going to reinforce the confidence. If you're presenting in front of an audience and you crack a few, dad jokes or a few awkward jokes, and the audience laughs, what do you think is going to happen? Not only are you building rapport with the audience, but you are reaffirming that your natural, authentic voice is valued, is heard, and is appreciated. And that's a good thing. What if instead you were to do a presentation and the entire time you were using language that you don't normally use. Perhaps you were faking being way more professional and stiff than you would like to be. And then the feedback that you got afterwards was positive. Well, now you're going to experience something called cognitive dissonance. And that's the idea where your thoughts and your behaviors don't line up. And it really causes a great sense of discomfort within you. And ultimately, that will start to become resistance. And that will start to form sort of this uncomfortable feeling around public speaking and around presentations, whatever the case, because you are reaffirming behaviors and thoughts that you don't support, right? It's a loop. It really is a feedback loop. So the more that you can work on finding a version of your authentic voice, the more comfortable you get using it, the more your confidence will grow. And the more confident you grow, the better you will feel using your authentic voice, and the easier it will become. The easier it becomes, the more positive feedback you'll receive. And then the more confident you get, right? Do you see where I'm going with this? It's a feedback loop, but it's up to you whether the feedback loop is positive or negative. And a lot of that also comes down to your interpretation of it. Are you focusing on the things that went well? Are you focusing on the progress? Are you focusing on the moments where perhaps you let some of that authenticity shine and people responded really well to it? Or are you focusing on the moments where things didn't go to plan? Perhaps you stuttered. Perhaps you lost your train of thought for a moment. Perhaps you made a mistake. What are you focusing on? Because that is what your mind will reaffirm. So if you're spending time focusing on the growth and the progress and the results that you're seeing, even if they're small, that's how you will continue to reaffirm the growth and the progress and more results. Again, it's a feedback loop, but it's a feedback loop that you choose to focus on. Now, when it comes to finding your authentic voice, there are a few things that really tend to hold people back. Now, when it comes to finding your authentic voice, there are really three big fears that I see many of my clients experiencing. The first would be a fear of judgment from the audience, judgment from the individuals, judgment from people that know them. And that really stems from a fear of breaking out of the comfort zone that they have built for themselves, as well as the comfort zone that others have of us. Now, what do I mean by this? In each relationship that we have, whether it is personal, professional, whatever the case, the other individuals, the other parties, have a certain idea, a perception, or a comfort zone that they have developed for us. This is the ways that they expect us to behave, the way that they expect us to talk, the way that they expect us to act, the things that they believe that we do and we don't do. So in the context of perhaps working with colleagues, maybe they have an idea of you as someone who's shy, reserved, introverted. And if all of a sudden you step out of that and start being the life of the party, well, now you're breaking their perception of you. You're breaking their comfort zone of you. And for many people, that's uncomfortable because they have a fear of judgment of what stepping out of that comfort zone will mean. Will people like them? Will people not like them? Will people talk about them? Will people gossip about them? Whatever the case, stepping out of the comfort zone is hard, and there's a lot of fears associated with that. The second thing I see often holding clients back from learning to speak authentically would be really overthinking the situation, overthinking themselves, overthinking their presentation, overthinking their word choice, overthinking the scenario of what can go wrong, what will other people think, what will other people say, what if this happens, what if that happens, what if someone asks me this? And it just becomes a loop of things and what ifs. And in most cases, the majority of those things never happen. And if they do happen, on the odd chance that one of those things happens, it's usually not as bad as we make it out to be in our mind. So overthinking really tends to hold a lot of people back. It's really tied into the idea of perfectionism and that need for control, where maybe if I can control every single other aspect of the situation, then I have more control over this situation and these things that I'm scared of, these questions, these judgments, this potential gossip, it's less likely to happen. That's where you see people trying to hold on to control as much as they can in trying to pick the perfect outfit, the perfect topic, trying to structure their word choice to be perfect for the entire presentation. If the lighting, the camera, the outfit, the shoes, whatever the case, isn't perfect by their standards, well, then they don't want to do it anymore. And again, I'm going to challenge that thought. And if you're someone who resonates with that, totally okay. Totally okay. A lot of us do. But the first step is really recognizing that this is what is happening and recognizing that the things that you are thinking, the things that you are overthinking, are not always a reflection of reality. Now, the third thing that I see is imposter syndrome. And that's where people really tend to disqualify the qualifications they have, the experience they have, anything that they do well, really just any sort of positive thing about themselves, they tend to disqualify and think that it's not enough for the situation. They don't have enough speaking experience. They're too shy. They're not extroverted enough. They're not qualified enough. Whatever the case, it really comes down to feeling like you're not enough of insert the blank here. Now, again, if you're someone who resonates with any or all of those, the fear of judgment, the overthinking, the perfectionism, the imposter syndrome, totally okay. A lot of us have been there. I've been there myself. I dealt with imposter syndrome for years. Being in graduate school, I was surrounded by a lot of really smart individuals. So many people that were doing these amazing things. And it really left me in a place of feeling like I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't doing enough. So I held myself back for years. I didn't want to volunteer. I didn't want to network. I definitely did not want to do presentations in front of all of these smart people, but I had to. And I'm glad I did. Because once I realized that I'm doing the same type of research they are, I am using the same skills as they are, I'm running the same statistics as they are, I'm at the same conferences, I'm at the same meetings, I'm in the same program. Once you start to recognize why you're qualified and why the things that you're doing are good enough, it helps you get through the door. And it helps you lay the foundation to start building that confidence and to start finding your voice. And hey, if you are less qualified, but you're still in the same room, good for you. And you deserve to be there. And instead, use that as an opportunity to learn and improve. There's no shame in owning our mistakes. There's no shame in owning our flaws. There's no shame in admitting when we lack experience in a certain area. Let that sink in. There is no shame in admitting that we lack experience in a certain area. But it is up to us to gain that knowledge and to gain that experience if it is something that is bothering us, if it is something that is making us feel like we're less than, if it is something that we need that will help us improve and grow, then it's our responsibility to go and acquire that knowledge and those skills. Simple as that. In the meantime, don't let it hold you back though. Now, for anyone starting out or for anyone on the journey to finding their authentic voice, my first recommendation would really be to practice a lot of self-compassion and self-acceptance. Wherever you are in your journey, whatever stage you're at, it's okay. It's totally okay to be at the starting point of where you are. Accepting that will help you grow and progress much faster than trying to bury your head in the sand and denying the reality of your situation. So if you're someone who is unable to present in front of, let's say, a group of 5 people because the nerves are just so overwhelming, that is okay. But be honest with yourself that that's where you're starting from so that you can accurately assess your growth and your progress instead of lying about the situation and being held back for a longer period of time. The second thing, as you're starting this journey or as you're on this journey, the second recommendation would be to focus on the progress. Focus on the small things that you can do to really see improvements and to build that confidence while you work on the big things. As an example, if you are someone who is very nervous to speak in front of a large group of people, let's say 20 people or more, how can you work on being more confident presenting in front of 2 people or 5 people in the meantime? Can you work on your stage presence? Can you work on your tone and your range? Can you work on using less filler words? Can you work on improving yourself to be a better public speaker in front of that group of 5 people so that you're laying a foundation by the time you get to a group of 10 people, 15, or 20. Now, my third recommendation would be to find a supportive community or supportive individuals to help you on your journey. But the trick is to find individuals who will give you honest feedback along the way. Sometimes we want people who are supportive, aka we just want people to tell us what we want to hear. And that hinders your growth. If people are telling you what you want to hear, you'll think that you're doing much better than you actually are. And if your goal, honestly, is to improve, then you need people who will give you honest feedback along the way. Let me give you an example. Honest feedback could be something like, hey, you used a lot less filler words this time around, but you spoke a little bit monotone. And that's great, because now you know what you need to work on. But really good feedback can also include actionable steps for you. So for example, it could be something like, hey, you did a much better job using less filler words, but you still said when you were thinking, and you use so as a transition for almost every sentence. Why don't you practice the same exact speech and really take your time to not say so? And then I can watch it back and give you feedback again. That small difference really helps you hone in on what your next step is. And that's really the key to growth. You know, for some of us, it may be harder to access a supportive community. It may be harder to access individuals who will give honest feedback, and that's okay too. That happens. Consider reaching out online, Reddit threads, YouTube communities. There are people out there who are going through the same sort of things that you are, who would be willing to talk about it, to share, to encourage you along the way. If that alone is outside your comfort zone, that's okay. Just be really honest with yourself and be really honest with giving feedback to yourself. So again, when you look at mistakes, when you look at things that didn't go well, when you look at things that you did that you're disappointed by, that's okay. But focusing on that will slow you down. It may even lead to you losing your motivation entirely. Instead, it's very important that you look at the things that didn't go to plan. It's very important that you look at the mistakes you made. But it's even more so important that you use them as feedback, as an opportunity to grow and improve. So if you watch yourself back on video and you cringe, and you're like, oh, I can't believe I said and so many times. Don't just leave it at that. Do it again, and this time work specifically on not saying Work specifically on having a moment of silence as you process your thoughts instead of saying Being honest with yourself and giving yourself that kind of feedback will help you grow so much faster. Now, the last key to this, the last way to really find your authentic voice and to become better at public speaking is to just start. It's quite literally to just start. If doing it in public is way too scary at the moment, that's okay. Take your phone, put it up on a shelf, stand in front of it as if you were standing in front of an audience, and record yourself. Open up your Facebook or your Instagram, record a reel, go on a Facebook Live. If that's too scary, do a mock version first. Once you've done that a few times, give yourself a goal of maybe going and doing one reel, doing one YouTube video. Whatever the case, it's really about doing it and implementing the things that you're practicing and just forcing yourself to step outside of your comfort zone and really just do the thing. Practicing on your own is fantastic. Practicing on your own is a necessity. Practicing on your own will help you improve. But practicing on your own doesn't mimic the real environment of when you're in front of strangers, in front of colleagues, in front of clients. So although practicing on your own is crucial, you need the practice live as well. Maybe a mock practice with a friend or family member. Maybe putting yourself into more networking events. Maybe taking on more coffee chats, more sales calls, just to get those reps in. Just so that you can reflect back, track your progress, and really focus on the things that you're doing well, that you can lean into more, while you work on improving the things that didn't go quite to plan. Now, let me remind you, nobody is perfect. Even individuals who you see are doing amazing now started from a place where they lack the confidence as well. And that is okay, because nobody becomes a master without starting as a novice or as an apprentice or without just starting. Now, my last bit of advice, as you keep playing around, as you try to find your authentic voice, as you track your progress and continue putting yourself into either practice or live simulations, go online and find examples of individuals that you really resonate with. That could be by watching YouTube videos, TED Talks, social media, someone at work, whatever the case. Start looking for examples of other individuals that you really admire, that you really resonate with their style. And notice if there are any patterns. What you'll find is that the people that you tend to resonate with the most, the types of speakers that you're really drawn to, that's usually the type of speaker that you secretly want to be. They have the qualities that you actually want in yourself. So use them as motivation. Use them as inspiration. I won't go so far as to say copy what they're doing, but try it out. Try it on for size. If they're doing something that you really like, if, for example, they move around a lot, they use their body language really well, try it for yourself. Practice at home. Record and watch it back. See how it feels. You're drawn to it. You resonate with it. It's something that you would like for yourself. So try it. Implement it. That is how you will find your voice. That is how you will find your confidence. Now, as you start putting yourself out there in live situations more and more, try to start with low pressure situations if you can, or as I like to call them, low stakes environments. That way, if something is not going well, the repercussions or the consequences are quite low, or maybe even none. This could be perhaps volunteering at a local event, maybe volunteering at a local community center, reaching out to nonprofit organizations and asking them if they would like help with anything, maybe even running a workshop on something that you're passionate about or something that you're an expert in. That is a great way to really practice your public speaking skills and gain that confidence while still being in a low stakes environment, because you're not at work, you're not in front of a bunch of people you know, your professional reputation is not on the line. It's just something that you're doing out of the kindness of your heart on your own time. But it's phenomenal for getting those reps in. Okay, so start small, get that confidence, get that practice, get that positive feedback, even if it is from yourself, and use that as a positive feedback loop so you can continue to improve. Again, communication is one of those things that we will always need, regardless of your field, regardless of whether you work in person or virtually. Communication is something that all of us will need forever. So it is something that is worth investing in. It is something that is worth your time, your energy, and your effort. And if you're someone who knows that the fear of public speaking has held you back so far, then you know it is time to change that. If it has held you back until this point, then it will continue to hold you back until you're able to change it. As we wrap up this episode, your 5-letter word for today is trust. Trust is essential in communication, and it's essential with yourself, especially as you continue to build that confidence. You need to be able to trust in yourself, trust in your authenticity, and trust in your voice. Even if that means literally trusting that your voice won't fail you when you're full of nerves and anxiety. Trust is crucial for developing that confidence, whether on your own or in front of a large crowd. The more you trust yourself, the more confident you'll get. Public speaking is one of the biggest fears out there, and it's time for that to change. What's the next step that you will take? Is it recording yourself? Is it signing up for some sort of workshop? Is it finding a public speaking buddy to give you feedback on? Whatever it is, I'd love to hear it, and I'll encourage you to take that next step today before you lose that motivation. Thank you so much for listening in, and I'm so excited to talk to you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Your 5-Letter Word. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, I love to hear about your breakthroughs. I'm here to serve your soul a cup of peace and a slice of joy. Until next time, take care.